Kia ora everyone, and welcome to Phase 5, Group 3 webinars on the consultation process. I'm going to start as ever with karakia. I thought today I would do whakataka te ho because it was certainly very frosty here this morning. Whakataka te ho ke te uru, whakataka te ho ke te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hia aki ana te atakura, he te he huka, he hao tuia, tihe, Māori ora. It was indeed a touch of frost, so I thought that one would be appropriate. All right, well, welcome everyone, as I said, to the dance session. I'll just explain how everything is going to go, and then I will introduce my lovely guest. So those of you who've been here before know I'm going to kind of show you the landing page, talk about how you get to the consultation material, talk about the process of those things, and then we'll have a little bit of a look through a feedback summary that I've generated, and I'll pop the link into the chat for everyone to look at. Again, this was created with with expertise, not just Claire's wonderful opinion. So thank you to those people who've contributed. Maybe I'll turn now to you, if you don't mind, Ryan, and if you could just introduce yourself to the lovely people, and I'll pop that slide up while you're doing so. And maybe if you just want to give us your high-level take on the dance Phase 5 draft curriculum as well.
Cool. Thanks, Claire. Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Ko Ryan Timoku Benjamin toku ingoa no Tāmaki Makaurau ahau. My name's Ryan. I'm from Auckland. Currently, typically Associate Principal of a South East Auckland Junior College, 7 to 10, but historically was a head of department and dance and drama teacher across 9 to 13. It's still a space that I occupy in various other roles as well, and is an area that I'm incredibly passionate about, particularly how we pathway up to Phase 5 and the groundwork that it takes down at the yet to be known Phase 4. And I guess a significant chunk of my professional career has been in the subject association space. So was chairperson of the Dance Subject Association of New Zealand, DSANS, for 8 years, and then a year as treasurer before rolling off to focus on demands here at school. And I guess my high level, to stick with the brief there, Claire, reaction to the Phase 5 material is that on the surface, it could be really easy to assume that it seems by and large similar to what's being practiced out there now. And it's not until you start to strip away the peel and to dive much deeper that you see that there are some catch points there that if we don't meaningfully consult on and submit responses to, could be problematic in terms of what we are left with longer term once it's implemented. So I guess as we've said along the road of all of these consults, the devil is in the detail, and it's the detail as teachers we need to be engaging with, because on the surface it can seem like a like-for-like swap, and it's very much not that. So yeah, not to be tripped up by things that seem to give clarity on the surface or seem similar and familiar, but to really dive in at what those implications are.
Cool. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, let me take you now to the consultation sort of landing page. The link is in the chat, but I will take you through that to see if we can see. Everybody can see what I can see. Yes, lovely. Okay, great. So as you'll see, these are very similar to the last one. The Survey Monkey is out. It is out until August 3rd, so it's next week. It's a very, again, fairly brief consultation period, and unfortunately fell during the non-contact time. I never use the word holidays. Wanting to make sure everyone has, I want to make sure people have time to engage, but I don't want to interrupt you in your non-contact time either. And so these links up here, if you come here, will take you to the dance content itself. If you click through there, you'll see you find the Phase 5 drafts. You have to go down to the file download section, which is here. It's a bit of clicking. And dance is at the very bottom of this list, I believe. Where's it gone? Yep. Right down at the bottom is the dance draft. that you will need to download to take a look at. So that's a nice, easy way to get to that, hopefully, for everyone. And then also here on the consultation, the computer's decided to be very slow. Apologies to you. And then the other things that are featured on that page, if we get back there, are, oh gosh, I'm going full technical difficulties now. The consultation landing page is again, which is where the Survey Monkey is, and then the direct link to the consultation survey. As we talked about in a few of the other webinars, the questions you get to answer depend on whether or not you locate yourself as a teacher, as a principal, as a family member, as a parent, as an academic. It gives you a range of different options. I did ask about this did ask the ministry around, how can I answer all of the questions? And they didn't really come back with a clear answer on that one. So maybe just, if you want to answer the most questions, try and tell them your various people. Again, with it, you can go and just consult on this particular learning area or this particular subject, and then go back later and do the other ones that are in phase 3, that are in group 3 or phase 5, so many different words, which include the learning languages and some from the Te Maratanga Aotearoa as well. So if you're wanting to consult on those as well, you can do it all in one survey, or you can do it on this and then go back later, because it gives you, a few different, you can do 5 different subjects in one kind of survey. Go at it. But I was told by the ministry you could go back and do it later on. They're not going to kind of cancel you out. The other things I've popped onto this landing page again, here is a download of the potential survey questions. It's all 43 of them that you might be asked if you want to have a little bit of a look at that as you're looking at the document itself. I've also popped in here the curriculum phase 1 to 4, the draft curriculum as it currently stands. So if you want to have a look at that, particularly as Ryan was indicating, thinking about how phase 5 fits in or doesn't with the current draft for phase 1 to 4. There's also the curriculum guides that I've made that we did previously earlier in the year around phase 1 to 4. If you want to have a look at that and just kind of get a quick sense of where dance was at. And I've also popped down a little link to some of the previous senior secondary dance material that was on TKI that you can still access if you just want to remind yourself what went before. So we will now have a look here. This is the feedback summary document that I'm going to run through, and hopefully Ryan's going to chime in. My computer has decided to be extremely slow to really match up with my day-to-day team. Come on, right along. Have a think. All right. Okay, so the feedback summary, again, created with the expertise of dance teachers and not just my magical thinking. And I tried to kind of build this resource around some of the questions that are very much focused on in that survey that you'll find from the ministry. So some of the big things to look at is that sort of pathways idea, what the prescription level is around the dance curriculum, look at the progressions, and look at how inclusive it is. The key cross-cutting tension issue, and this is one that has happened in lots of the other subjects, is that between sort of standardization of content and then how authentic it is or responsive it can be to your actual learners. So that's, a red flag that's been popped up in lots of places. So just to talk about what's in the dance curriculum, the purpose statement talks about the student's ability to connect, create, respond, and perform. Those are the curriculum strands and the way that the dance curriculum has been organized. And it has designated what it determines are 3 core areas of learning: choreography, performance, context, and style. It does have some content around Māori and Pacific influences, but there's varying discussion, I think, as we'll find with Ryan, about the emphasis in those areas and how much flexibility teachers will have. So we'll move to looking now at that initial pathways visual. For those of you who haven't seen it, that's a little diagram at the beginning of the document that sort of tells you where the wonderful world of dance might take you. The respondents to this felt like it was quite good that it was, perhaps a good tool for students in terms of thinking about their subjects and gave them a structure. There is some concern around the clarity across the years 11 to 13, some inconsistency, and maybe not signalling enough some of the other careers and pathways that dance can take you. Ryan, do you want to chime in on the pathways of dance?
Yeah, by and large, a good snapshot there. I think it's always uh, most effective when we point learners and whānau and those that are not in the know in the schools that we work in about the intricacies of dance and where the knowledge and practices can take us in the future, that we are, before pointing out things like performer and dancer, that we're pointing out all of those other pathways that the transferable skill set that we develop through our encounters with dance as a discipline can take us to as well. So, I mean, if we're gonna start with the good stuff and the positivity sandwich, that this is a reasonable start to see what's being acknowledged there.
Okay. All right, we'll move to the strands and knowledge. I think there's some threads there that Ryan, you've indicated we'll definitely come back to. So, the respondents agreed that the strands were mostly appropriate for dance. I mean, choreography and performance, I've done a bit of dance teaching here and there, so that sounds appropriate to me. But there is a concern around some of the content being, and the knowledge and practice statements being uneven. And so there's too much of it. Again, that kind of content overload, that's another thing we've heard in other subjects and learning areas, and then sort of disconnected from the realities of teaching in Aotearoa and from the learners that it's being designed for. And that, again, is coming out again in some of those thoughts around the authenticity of what it looks like in the real world. And then one thing that got flagged to me just recently was some of the content being aligned more to the health and physical education. So that would be an interesting thing, I think, to think about too, in terms of how that connects up or doesn't with the phase 1 to 4. But thoughts about the strands and knowledge practice, Ryan?
Yeah, a quick one on the health and PE thing. I think it's for what purpose is movement explored in these two relating areas where there is overlap. But I think when you go, again, through the core purpose of the learning area or a discipline in health and PE, we're typically exploring movement not for the communication of ideas or the artistic expression that it's there to serve, but in service of physical output and physical activity and contribution to healthy societies in particular ways. So I think that distinction sometimes in the way that knowledge or practices, we saw this especially in the overlap between the phase 3 and 4 drafts, I think really needs to be carefully looked at when it comes to things that may relate to two learning areas. In terms of the strands, the thing I keep thinking about is the impact of the loss of the developing practical knowledge strand. And I think about that across all disciplines of the arts. But in the context of dance, that's an entire strand that has been, spread or dissolved or divided up now across these other areas of choreograph, perform, respond, and connect. And therefore, what does, if we've lost an entire strand of learning, developing practical knowledge into what now we're going to see as the knowledge and practices within these newly framed strands, where is the space to acknowledge the knowledge that exists by doing, the knowledge that is knowledge because it is practical, it is shown, it is demonstrated, it is embodied, and that needing to be articulated across both the knowledge and practice columns of all of the strands that now exist to replace it. Because practical knowledge was really kind of the integrated driver of a lot of the previous strands' experiences. And needs to be reflected, I guess, here too.
Yeah, that's certainly a parallel across to, as you said, the other arts subjects and drama similarly, right? So where's that space for exploration and discovery and generating knowledge through movement? and the concern, I guess, with this being quite performative, in didactic and about, and it
And
being
that
like a fixed notion, right?
and that itself is content, right? If you're wanting consistent content across the country, consistent content across the country is the idea of developing the practice of exploring movement in many different ways. It doesn't suddenly become consistent when you label it with a common style and say that style in and of itself is going to be the consistent element. If we want consistent content, the exploration of practical, embodied applications of movement is core to that.
Okay, we'll carry on. Oh, my PowerPoint has just died. Oh no, it's not. Come back to me. Right,
There's
subject
a lot.
description. just poof, disappeared, magical. So the subject description, again, people felt like it did align to the knowledge and practice, but there are some issues around the clarity in the language. So again, this kind of narrowing framing, this sort of prescriptive content sort of thing, rather than that broader purpose. I think we've already spoken to that a little bit. And some of these descriptions being very wordy, very, verbose, and just a lot. And therefore, and I think another one around this clarity about concepts, that's something that's been talked about too recently, obviously with the music curriculum, some of the terminology confusion. And then, as you said, what was, as you just pointed out in terms of that practical knowledge, that stuff around the creativity, collaboration, all those transferable skills that are important that we learn through the art form of.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Not much more to add there. Like, yeah. I think
Yeah.
you
Okay.
said very frankly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. This area now, appropriateness for the year. This was an area that was raised as quite a significant concern. So some of it was considered appropriate, but some didn't seem to be either manageable or really differentiated across. And I think this is another one where it might be worth talking to how this, how phase 4, or what we currently have in the draft around phase 4, factors into this, because there was a sense when I've been reading the stuff of some stuff is, just it's in the wrong place in phase 4, and then some stuff in the year 11 to 13 is also in the wrong place, and then there's a repetition of things too. So we've got both the comment here that some of the concepts, choreographic concepts, were too easy, but then some of the other things were too complicated.
Yeah, I total those sentiments. I think year 11 by and large feels very, very full. And it's really hard to gauge where that will sit without the comparison directly next to it of what that end point of phase 4 is going to also deliver in terms of dance is my hope and expectation, but it was labeled performing arts in the earlier draft, and where can you get to, particularly if you're going to combine them under this general umbrella term, where can you realistically get to by the end of phase 4 to then begin a journey that is as clogged as year 11 makes out, particularly if it is now a set of required content, and therefore no longer like it was under a standard-based approach where you might design a program of learning from the New Zealand curriculum and level 6 to line up with particular aspects of standards as it was, but now is essentially a shopping list that we must go from aisle to aisle, collecting as experiences, and in some cases you wouldn't have a lot of time to collect that particular can from a shelf in aisle 3. You might have half a lesson to cover that piece of material because there is a large amount to get on with. And also that raises, and again, it goes back to what is practical knowledge in the context of these new strands, the huge disparity between several more knowledge points being listed than the opportunity to practice them or to put them in the body. And so I think there's also a balancing needed between the extensiveness of the knowledge column and the very brief opportunities it describes for developing practices which are skills, strategies, and applications to teach. I think that there's a whole lot more than what's just listed there.
Yeah. Yes, and as you said, that what will you get home and discover you have not purchased from the supermarket when you when you had to rush around in such a kind of shortened period of time. Okay, progression. So one of the strong themes was about the progression, and that there's not a consistent sort of developmental pathway. Again, there's kind of siloing into the content. There's a feeling that the significant Māori concepts are there in the year 11, but they're not returned to. So how are they deepened through years in 12, 13? There's a concern about 12 and 13 being a little bit too similar, so lack of increased complexity. And then just that practical consideration of actually how schools are organising their dance programs. Do you want to talk to that? Because I think that practical thing is really important.
Yeah, it's hard to be brief because there's so much to speak to in that regard. I think of I briefly hesitate when I think of some of the overlap between 12 and 13 is a slight advantage when we think of nationwide how often and how common it is for those two levels to be combined as a single class. So in terms of seeing some parallel and similarity between the items listed for 12 and 13 can be great from a selecting things to design for teaching and learning point of view. But we can't then say, oh, but you were in year 12, and so this year you get to rinse and repeat a similar course of study in year 13 because the school's limitations and resourcing happens to force that class to be combined. And so I think there needs to be an understanding of what makes a good cohesive combined year 12 and 13 course that still enables pathways for the second year of that to be explored. I also think about the resourcing limitation in terms of teaching and learning resources, and for some of the styles referenced in achieving the new connections or contexts type strand, and where the sources of knowledge for this to be taught, learnt, and experienced by students actually sits there. From region to region, and even within regions, there could be huge differences in the access to people or materials that can actually effectively help this to be built into programs. So it's one thing to say inclusive by including the words and the aspiration to deliver a particular genre or style, but does the expertise and the resource actually exist there without further straining already limited or stretched sources? I might have gone off topic there, Claire, but
no, that's right. You go very nicely into the inclusivity and accessibility slide that I've just lodged up as you were speaking, because I think that very much talks to that, right? So the access to particular dance pieces, particular resourcing, people, professional development, and as you said, that kind of combining level classes and the risk of students repeating things or just not getting a genuine progression. I wonder if you could talk a little bit to about the space of Māori knowledge in the dance curriculum, because again, the idea that it's in year 11 and then disappears seems not great.
Yeah, I mean, at year 13, we see references to, Moss Patterson comes back in. We see references to Te Kura and Hawaii too, and the material developed in that space in terms of responses to or experiencing particular established practices in dance. There is a bit of a lull in terms of looking for keywords in the year 12 column. And again, I guess, without being able to answer it as such, it's wonderful to see Toi Māori and Māori context listed as areas for study in the knowledge columns. But it comes back to, um, if we're asking the question, whose knowledge is it? And we also have to ask the question, who is best placed, or who stands with the best intention and capability to be able to share that out. So I do think the cultural risk factor is significant, particularly again if what's being listed is in essence a shopping list where no matter where you are at whichever end of the country, you are expected to cover off this material. It puts significant demand on the few sources of knowledge that we typically uh, look to in this field. So yeah, I think getting into too much detail around that is risky in and of itself. But I think questions need to be asked as to how it would be adequately resourced to ensure that safety is factored in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that speaks to the next bit here, is just this side here is the additions, the things that people identify missing really from the current draft. And that again talks to, I think we've talked about transferable skills, but that flexibility around genre and selection and resourcing, and again speaking to your local context, right, and what resources are available to you, and what the and making it, making it accessible for everyone, and how that might work. And then I think that thing about integration is interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one of the details I would not want people to overlook is the looseness of the suggestion that teachers might propose alternative dances where they meet the learning intentions of the course and curriculum. But I don't know that that's overly committed language and framing of that sentence, and I am concerned in something that is being high level announced as being a consistent approach to what learners experience, whether these genre will end up being mandated or required. That brings up a whole bunch of skills, expertise, resource questions. But when I think of our colleagues across the motu and dance, our experiences into and through those pathways are as diverse as the people teaching them. And so to suggest that particular lists, almost like set texts in English or prescribed playwrights in drama, to list particular context as the only context or genre to be studied, is incredibly problematic. And again, if we think about what is at the essence of dance as a discipline within the learning area, a more consistent thing to be achieving across the country would be the types of things we experience, and not necessarily the context that those experiences are filtered through, and that would be worth saying often and repeatedly in every way that we can.
Okay, what brings us, it's 4:59. We are doing really well, Ryan. So this is just a summary again of those kind of key themes. I think we've spoken to those. I think what you've just said there is really important around teacher agency, around contextualized curriculum design, and thinking about that authenticity for the learner and for the teacher, and what this curriculum does or does not provide for them to be able to do that. You can see here some of those the strengths around the aspects that they like the valuing of those particular strands, but they're concerned around that overprescription and the lack of coherence for progression. And then how is it actually going to roll out? Do you want to just give us your final thoughts, Ryan, and then I will karakia us out of here for the afternoon.
I guess final thoughts are exactly the same as my opening thoughts. In the sense that, it's these details that need to be interrogated, and the best people to interrogate them are the dance teaching community. And so to pull apart the different things, line them up with maybe what current practice might look like, and to consider, what was the aspiration originally for Te Mātai and the direction that it set and set for us, and to look at the difference between what this draft provides and what more we could be asking or suggesting to get us closer to that.
Lovely. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much for your participation this afternoon. I really appreciate it. Thank you again to the people who contributed to this resource. I've popped the link for both the landing page, which was the first link, and then this document, which is the second link, but you can get to this through the landing page. As ever, my big urging is for you to participate in the consultation process. Keep a copy of what you submit up through the SurveyMonkey, because you know how those things can go sometimes, and it eats your answers. Talk to your associate, to fellow dance teachers, or if you're just a person that's interested, that's wonderful too. There are resources through. I know that such associations have been gathering. I know it's a very short time frame, but I think, as Ryan says, the more you can engage with this and give them really quality feedback, hopefully that will make an impact. All right, so thanks everybody. I'm going to cut it here for set us on our way, and thank you again for coming along. Ka tuku mihi ato mō ngā manakitanga o te wā. Kia runga he tātou katoa. Tihei Māori ora. Thanks again for your support and your time. Thank you very much, everyone. Ka kite.